Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. This is the weekly chart of silver. I've drawn some lines in here. The short-term action has been pretty boring, so I wanted to step out and take a larger look. The big question at hand is whether or not we've made some type of a long-term top, like a bubble top, or the top of a parabolic move. So you can see in the past we had a couple of these. This did not result in a crash, but it basically resulted in a long time recovery. So recovery through time. This one here resulted in quite a dramatic drop. So the question is, are we looking at something like this, or are we going to break out to the upside? My prediction is we're actually going to go to the upside. I say that for a couple of reasons. I think, first of all, just because of the fundamentals, but the fundamentals were pretty strong back here, so that's not reason enough alone. Also, just the nature of this spike here. Normally when you have a spike like this, if you're going to crash from there, you normally do something like this, and then you get a bounce, and then you go down more, something on the order of this, which we really didn't see. We're seeing a lot of strength into this, looking to form a new top. So if we pull out, you can see the trend line is still intact and very strong. So I'm guessing that this is going to continue, the strength is going to continue, and I think we need to get through the 45 level and begin to form some type of cup formation before we go higher. I could be wrong, but when I look at the inventories, and we'll see that in an article I'm going to cover, when we look at the supply and we look at the number of people coming into the market, I think that the fundamentals are probably going to win out, barring some catastrophic economic news that comes out that could change the situation. And speaking of that, I wanted to jump back over to Bank of America, which announced today that it's raising more cash. They're selling off their stake in the China Construction Bank, so they're raising another $8 billion. That's to be added to the $5 billion that Uncle Warren gave them. So it appears that Bank of America has averted some type of crisis. You can see on the 5-day, this day is the island reversal when the day before I made my prediction that the company was going to go bankrupt within a month. The next day, they announced the Buffett deal, and now we've gone 2 days and we've got another $8 billion. So the price seems to be rallying on this news. If we look at the volume, we can see we put in an 859 million share day on the 25th, and we had some very, very heavy days right next to it. Today is backing off a little bit on the volume, but we traded almost 2 billion shares in these days, so that may be some heavy support, and it may be that the powers that be have put things off for a while. They may have kicked the can down the road. So we'll have to wait and see. I may still be right on my prediction because things change so rapidly when you get into the fall financial period, where if the dominoes start falling, they fall so rapidly back the way they did in 2008. So it could easily turn down, but it looks to be strong at this point. I want to jump over to the article by Silver Shield, or the Don't Tread on Me blog. He's given what he's called his final warning, and I think it's interesting that he is deciding to stop covering silver. And he makes some interesting points in here about what he thinks is going to happen. So I'm going to read through this and make my comments as I go along. Silver Shield's final warning by Silver Shield on August 25th, 2011. 1 year ago marked the beginning of silver returning to its rightful role as money in the world. 1 year ago, silver was at $17.76 an ounce after a very long and drawn-out consolidation that went all the way back to St. Patrick's Day in 2008. 1 year ago was the beginning of silver's breathtaking run to almost $50 an ounce, a 178% return. Even today, despite the massive paper attack in May and the last 2 days, we're still up 104% year over year. When I published the groundbreaking Silver Bullet and Silver Shield article February 25th, silver was at $32. On June 27th, I said to buy physical silver at $33. Both dates were very good days to buy and never went below those numbers. Now I'm telling you all, for the last time, buy physical silver. I will be taking this weekend to make every effort I can to make those that have been wavering in their purchase of physical silver to make the commitment and do it before the end of the month. I believe that we are on the knife's edge of a major shift that will make silver untouchable if you do not secure your metal right now. The end of this month marks a seasonal shift for silver investors and the end of the sell in May and go away. With the expiration of the Crimex contract today and with Bernanke's possible announcement of QE3 tomorrow. Now, we all remember that Bernanke put off his announcement for 6 weeks. This could be that last best time in your life to buy physical silver. If you look at this 37-year seasonal chart for silver, you can see that the last week of September is the beginning of a very strong seasonal move in silver that should take us into another strong run all the way into February. If we get something similar like we did last year and it runs until May, we could see $100 silver by early next year. That's interesting. That's my prediction, that we're going to get $100 silver by the end of this year and the beginning of next year. So looks like Silver Shield agrees with me. You can see if you go to the chart here that he puts up that you do have a strong month of February, but other than that, September, October, November, and December, these 4 months in a row are the strongest months for silver. So we could very well begin a run. You have to remember, if we had a run like the last one that we had, it roughly tripled, so that would take us to 120 by roughly sometime in the spring or maybe a year from then. So it may correct back, but 120 would be the price target if we do a rough tripling of where we are. I do not believe we will see $100 silver because of the massive fraud in the metal suppression business will make silver unattainable. Now that's very interesting. Call on his part. What he's saying is that when silver begins to rise above $50 and probably starts moving rapidly towards $75, there's going to come a point in there where it goes unattainable. I listened to his interview on the Big Dad's channel, and he used the term the silver event horizon, which he thinks is going to be a situation where everyone tries to get into silver at the same time and it just simply goes unattainable. That's possible. I'm not going to say that that can't happen. I don't foresee that happening. I think we're going to have a steady rise, a steady controlled rise, and we're going to go through 50, and when we go through 50, I think we're going to see a rapid move towards 75, probably a correction back to 50, and then a rapid move to 100 would be my prediction. I think the public is really going to take note when we finally break that nominal 50 barrier, even though we know, based on shadow stats inflation figures, that the actual inflation adjusted high for silver is nearly $200, so that $50 really isn't that meaningful, but in the public's eye, it is a meaningful number. So continuing, silver and gold are direct competitors to the dollar. The folks at the Fed, the Treasury, and JP Morgan do not want to see silver rise in price. They suppress the price, because if silver rose, that would mean that the basis for all their power, the dollar, would become worth less and eventually worthless. Andrew Maguire exposed this fraud and nearly paid with his life in a very suspicious hit and run. That's an interesting point. I remember when Raw Doglet brought up a video where he said that he didn't think that Andrew Maguire was a real person. Now, I noticed a couple months ago, or maybe a month or so ago, that Andrew Maguire appeared, was at the recent GATA conference. I don't know. If any of you can confirm that Andrew Maguire actually appeared in person and spoke, I'd be interested in that. So, his claim is that there is 50 to 100 times the amount of paper traded for every physical ounce of real silver and gold. Just look at all the manipulation in the May silver drive-by shooting I reported on. The elite use a myriad of paper schemes to suppress the price of the physical metal. They all work rather effectively until the day comes that they cannot deliver on what they promised. Now, this 50 to 100 figures is used fairly frequently. I think the number is much, much higher. I've done some analysis on daily trading in the COMEX of ounces of silver, and depending on which numbers you use and how you analyze them, I've come up with as high as 5,000 to 1 as the number of paper ounces of silver that are traded for every physical ounce of silver. So this number portends a 50 to 100-fold rise when everything collapses in real value. That doesn't mean in dollar value, but in real value. So silver is basically underpriced by 50 to 100-fold, but I think that the move is going to be much larger than that. That's just my opinion. This coming seasonal silver bull run will coincide with a collapse in the dollar and the world's paper markets. There will be a rush of humanity into anything of real tangible value. Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of upset people who think they have gold and silver only to find out that they only have nothing. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. When this new reality becomes evident to those who do have the metal, they will not part with it for some paper money that they did not want years before. Excellent point. That's an excellent point. That's a point I make in my Office series. There's no reason to think that people will want to sell, or at least a large number of them will want to sell, because the reason they're buying the physical silver and physical gold is because they don't trust the paper currency. A whole bunch more of the paper currency isn't going to convince them to part with their silver. If you go and watch my Office series, the one that is on selling your silver explained, the protagonist in that explains that he would not be willing to part with his silver for even $1 billion an ounce. And he goes on to explain how in Weimar Germany the return on gold was 10,000%, but a year later, if you would have sold, you would have been completely wiped out. So I encourage you to watch that video. I'll link it below. That shift can happen in a span of a few days. With the length of time I know it takes to move money around, if you wait until it happens, it is too late. I think even Steve Jobs' resignation yesterday marks a very important shift in people's faith in paper assets. It was widely reported that Apple's market cap was higher than 32 of the largest banks in the Eurozone. It seems that all of the elite money managers love Apple. Apple's market cap is the largest in the world and is driven mainly by the cult-like following of Mac users to Steve Jobs. I am guilty of this since I own an embarrassing amount of Apple products. At the end of the day, what goes up must come down. I would hate to be Tim Cook today. No matter what this guy does, he will never fill the shoes of Steve Jobs, even if he does prove to be successful. Now skip down a little bit. This seasonal shift is coinciding with a secular shift in power. So when I say this could be your last best chance to buy physical silver, I do not say this for shock value. I say it because we are entering the most dangerous time in humanity as we head into this fall and into 2012. This will not be another 2008 or 1929. This mathematically inevitable collapse of the dollar will be the single largest event in human history. The collapse of the dollar will alter the way we live for generations to come. When it collapses, all paper assets will become worthless, as the very basis for the paradigm ceases to function. Not only will people's perception of value shift, I believe the power will shift from the West to the East, and that will lead to war. I have made every effort I know to convince you to sell every single paper asset you own to buy physical silver. And I have to emphasize this, I agree with him 100% on this. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. And I'm also talking about gold mining shares. Nothing against Eric Sprott, I think he's a fantastic guy, but I'm also talking about shares, whether it's gold, money, I don't care. If you don't hold it, and I'm not talking about having it held overseas by someone else, I mean you have to hold it. You have to know where it's buried, and it's not being held by someone else, because I think when this comes down, it's going to be magnitudes worse than anybody can imagine, and I don't think you're going to be able to get your silver. I think all of the systems are going to break down at the same time. It doesn't matter whether it's in Canada, it doesn't matter whether it's in Europe, it doesn't matter where it is. You're going to have your hands on it, or you're probably not going to get it. That's my guess. So I agree with him there. I'm even more extreme than he is. I stated in the groundbreaking article, The Silver Bullet and the Silver Shield, that, quote, buying physical silver is by far the greatest act of wisdom and rebellion by any American can and should be doing right now. In that article, I put forth a plan that will fundamentally change the game and do it from outside the system. It will overthrow the elitist system that enslaves us with debt and do so without a shot being fired. Most importantly, there is no way the elite can stop it. The plan is quite simple. Sell every single paper asset you own right now and buy physical silver. As with anything else in life, knowing the answer is not as important as knowing the why. The why is what brings about fundamental change in your thinking. This change in thinking brings about absolute certainty of the outcome. Absolute certainty brings about massive action. If that was not enough, I went ahead and provided 10 more influential articles that further expanded the understanding of owning physical silver, and that it is the greatest investment opportunity in human history. I did not stop there, as I then set about on a campaign to knock the foundations out of all other things that you might have faith in. I've written about the dollar, bonds, IRAs, 401ks, gold, paper silver, the SLV, Crimex, Bullion Vault, Hong Kong Mercantile Exchange, real estate, unemployment, inflation, and he goes on. I agree with him on all those things. All of those things are paper investments. They're going to go up the flue in the bonfire when it starts. So you need to keep stacking silver. It's the only answer to escaping from the coming storm of paper financial assets basically burning in a giant bonfire. I don't agree with him on some things. I don't agree with him that silver will become unattainable before it crosses 100. I don't think that's the case. I think silver's going to do something more like rhodium, but it's going to quietly move. Rhodium moved from $300 an ounce to $10,000 an ounce without the public even being aware. I don't think it'll be quite like that, but I think that silver will probably move ultimately to $500 without really much going on as far as the public knowing. It'll be reported, and when it's taken down, like it was in May, there'll be big announcements of how it's a bubble and things like that. But I think it's pretty much going to be a stealth market when it goes, and it's going to really need to go much higher than the $100 before, just my opinion, before it becomes unattainable. So we'll have to see who's right. I think he's bailing out a little bit early, but it's still an excellent article. Highly recommend it. I'll go ahead and link it. Last thing I wanted to look at is the Swiss franc. The central bank intervention continues on the Swiss franc. You can see we've had a tremendous downdraft in the Swiss franc, and if we pull up the long-term trend line, we've just ticked up above this downtrend. So we'll have to see how long this rally holds. I don't think these investors were wrong when they sold dollars and bought francs, but there's obviously going to be a big reaction when you move from $1.15 down to 70 cents within the space of just about a year. So we're going to keep an eye on this rally and see how far it goes, and when it turns down we may see the metals really take off. And we'll talk to you next time.